Hello, Void and all who inhabit it. It's me, and we are back to audio only today because I'm recording this in the middle of the night with a face mask on. "2020 hasn't been good for much, but for the last third of the year, Greek mythology was launched back into pop culture. For everyone not already reading Lore Olympus, at least. In September, the gaming development company Supergiant released the long-awaited Hades, a roguelike RPG, and a month later, Netflix released Blood of Zeus, an adult animated series that claims to tell a myth lost to the sands of time. Even though these are two different forms of storytelling, the lengths of both stories are nearly the same. Hades, the game, provides up to 100 hours of gameplay, but the full story, as calculated from this handy-dandy YouTube playlist, is about 5 hours, while Blood of Zeus's first 8-episode season, at an average of 30 minutes per episode, is a 4-hour-long story. Though these stories are close in length, the developers at Supergiant did much more with the time that they had than the writers of Blood of Zeus, which is the source of my ire today. I have a theory that due to the success of this game and show, we're going to see a slightly larger trend of more Greek mythology-centric media targeted towards adults in the next 3 to 5 years. Because of this, I want to do more than just roast Blood of Zeus for 20-something minutes, though that will be a large chunk of our time here on today. I want to unfurl how these stories are structured and consider the impact that they may have on more stories based in Greek mythology moving forward. Let's start with some base info. In Hades, the game, you play as Zagreus, son of Hades, the god, as he attempts to escape from Hades, the underworld realm. As mentioned, the combined cutscenes from the entire game total at around 5 hours, but you don't need to complete the game in order to experience the entirety of the main story. Zagreus exists in Greek mythology outside of this game. He is a minor god of rebirth, and he is the child of Hades and Persephone. But there aren't many stories about him, and definitely not one like this. Beyond some major Olympians and chthonic gods, Hades the game also features a few characters from major Greek myths. Blood of Zeus follows Hera, yes, that is how it is pronounced, the super strong, half-human, illegitimate son of Zeus who finds himself at the center of a war between the gods and demons/giants. Hera specifically does not exist outside of the shown Greek mythology, but he's basically alternate universe Hercules. There is a common trope in Greek mythology of major figures, often heroes but also kings, queens, and other major Olympians having been fathered by Zeus. But much of Hera's backstory, from his mother being a queen who slept with Zeus while he was disguised as her husband, to Hera being a twin, to the names Hera and Electra being very close to Heracles and Electrine, point to this story being heavily influenced by Heracles/Hercules specifically. I will be using both. I'm sorry. However, other than Hera, Electra, some major Olympians, and Chiron the Centaur, the other major characters of this show are unique to this story. Both of these stories take existing setups in mythology and manipulate them to make something new. It's the cousin of a live-action remake, but actually successful. Blood of Zeus was greenlit for a second season earlier this month, and Hades has near-perfect reviews from every major gaming publication. Again, this success pushes me to theorize about an upcoming trend of more mythology-based content. Plus, we already have seen for the past few years a trend of live-action remakes of cartoons and stories built on nostalgia, not actual plot, that suggests that some producers prefer to reproduce old stories instead of investing in new ones. Emphasis on reproducing old stories. Because while Hades, the game, builds off of known figures to create something dynamic, Blood of Zeus utilizes old tropes to remix a story seen before, and one of those structures typically gets recreated more often than the other. Let's look even closer, starting with the main character's motivation. At the start of Hades, the game, even you as the player don't know Zagreus' true motivation. You have to uncover why exactly he's trying to leave the underworld as you learn more about the story in general. But both his cover story and his true motivation are rooted in a desire to connect with family. Zagreus wants to learn more than his father has been willing to tell him. On the flip side, The choice to have Blood of Zeus recreate the story of Heracles as opposed to Odysseus or Perseus is a choice to focus on a hero whose entire story is fueled by man-pain, specifically man-pain that is the result of a goddess's vengeance and spite. If you don't know the original Heracles myth, essentially Hera hated him because he was yet another living example of Zeus's lack of fidelity. So she decided to carve out 60 years of time to just f with him. Just continuously made things difficult for his entire life. The gods being petty, fickle, and vengeful is also a common trope from Greek mythology, but what makes Heracles, and by extension Heron's, story different from other heroes is Hera's dedication to the petty. She refused to take her foot off his neck. And again, we've already seen this story chopped and screwed with similar heroes that have similar motivations connected to being wronged or targeted by the gods. Where Blood of Zeus differs is in making the mortal character with the revengeful motivation the villain, and telling the hero, well, you have to fight because everything is kind of your fault for being born. Heron's initial motivation is to protect his mother, and later find the person who killed her, which, man-pain. But once he finds that that person is his brother, his tone shifts to,
we can save you. We can make you human again. We have the technology.
Also, by this point, the civil war between the gods has already begun, and the fight because this is your fault is his main drive anyway. It's kinda dinky as far as motivations go, though to be honest, most of the characters in this show have dinky motivation. The best are Kofi and Evios, who fight for redemption, but everyone else has either a shitty reason, an inconsistent one, or a non-existent one. Speaking of Kofi and Evios, side characters are the largest ways these stories build the world, or fail to do so. Hades, the game, takes a relatively obscure figure, Zagreus, and surrounds him with well-known ones, but instead of relying on nostalgia to drive the emotional connection of the story, Hades, the game, builds upon stories we may or may not be familiar with. Throughout his travels, Zagreus can meet Sisyphus, Orpheus, Eurydice, Achilles, and Patroclus, which might just sound like a collection of names that end in S, but is a presentation of an opportunity for players to continue stories left in antiquity. What happens to selfish Sisyphus after years of punishment? Are Eurydice and Orpheus united after the latter's death? What about Patroclus and Achilles? The game lets you find out and decide what's next. Beyond building onto Zagreus' story specifically, these conversations along his journey also show us more about the underworld, the mortal world, and Olympus. In addition to your conversations with the mortals, talking to Thanatos and Ares, for example, lets you know that a lot of mortals have been dying recently, and once you meet Demeter, one major source of that becomes more clear. Plus, every boon opportunity reveals more about the Olympians' personalities. The Olympians have personalities. These characters aren't just set dressing for your journey, they have motivations and stories of their own, and learning more about them makes the entire game richer. Blood of Zeus is like an RPG where someone neglected to play any side quests or talk to any companions, which you can do, but so much is missed by not building surrounding characters along with the main story. The biggest glaring example of this in Blood of Zeus is the way that it treats its women.
Women! I said women!
In media fueled by man-pain, women exist for one of three reasons: to die and thus be at least an initial source of agony, to be evil, or to be a love interest. Sometimes the first and the last overlap. Regardless, women are not individual, actualized characters. They serve the man story or nothing at all. Beyond being someone who enjoys media that can pass the Kent test, let alone the Bechdel test, I think storytellers who are unable to write rounded female characters put huge holes in any plot.
But the show has a main female character, Adora the Amazon, who doesn't fit into any of these tropes.
I think if the season was 10 episodes, they definitely would have shoehorned in a love plot, but true. However, that doesn't mean she isn't still a flat tool for Heron's story. The best proof of this is the point in the plot where Alexia meets up with Chiron while Heron fights his way off a slave ship. The introduction of Chiron is another trope from hero myths. He often functions as the sage. But the difference between Chiron's relationship with Achilles, Jason, Hercules, and his relationship with Alexia is that the heroes of antiquity have a reason to know Chiron. Typically, it's because they were abandoned as children, but a lot of mythical heroes end up training with Chiron in preparation for greatness. Why does Alexia know him? We don't know. We're never told. She just says, I have to get to the smartest man I know. And even without the viewer knowing about the long list of heroes that have trained under Chiron, the fact that the demons are able to accurately guess Alexia's next step suggests that Chiron is the smartest man that everyone knows. This doesn't seem like a relationship that is unique to Alexia, despite the fact that when she shows up, Chiron is real chummy. We don't know how these two met, why they have this relationship, why Chiron would defy the demons by making a copy of the map. This is someone who cares about her, enough to do something dangerous, and we don't know why. Though you would think it would be relevant given how important his actions are going to be. Alexia is just put in a place to get a thing to advance the plot. At the same time, Heron meets Kofi and Evios. Very quickly, he and the viewer learn who they are and how they met each other. In 2 minutes' time, these characters, who are introduced halfway into the story, are given more background than a character who's been in the show since the pilot. In the beginning of episode 6, which ends the slave ship mini storyline when the Scooby Gang is all together back on the shore, Zeus touches down and tells Kofi and Evios, you are going to help because this will give you the chance to atone for that horrible thing you did. Again, in like 2 sentences, we get more motivation and character depth than Adora the Amazon will get for the entire show. Though, I do think it's funny, aka not funny at all, that this show was like,
we don't have not a single moment of time to devote to building up this woman's backstory, but one thing you will know is that her mom is also dead.
Kofi and Evios are still being used. I literally just said that Zeus told them to help. But they have their own motivations separate from Heron as well. If Alexia has one, we don't know what it is. We don't even know why she was hunting the demons in the first place, something that would have also helped build up Seraphim's motivation as king of the demons. Fairly simple opportunities to have much stronger world building are missed because Alexia is there to do things that will set Heron up for the next part of his story, as opposed to having her own story that happens to intersect with his. All the other women in this show fit in one of the other 3 categories easily, though I do want to focus on Hera for just a little bit. She not only is a prime example of horrible motivation, but her purpose in the plot also points to the negative potential in wrapping a new piece of media in already known characters and stories. Zeus's infidelity leading to Hera's rage and frustration is nothing new, but this show takes that and makes it caricature-like. Parts of this show felt like I was reading an Am I the Asshole post, which is to say, extremely unreliable depictions of everyone involved and exaggerated absurd reactions in a bad way. Hera starts a civil war among the gods, allying with the greatest enemy they have faced since the Titans, who is who they overthrew to get power, by the way, because Zeus cheated on her again. And if you think that there might be something more, that this latest transgression might have just been the straw that broke the camel's back, no. The show makes it very clear up until the end that Hera is driven specifically by the existence of this latest bastard and Zeus's unwillingness to kill him off, despite pointing out earlier that gods aren't supposed to interfere with anything and even using that fact against Zeus. Ultimately, Hera is the worst kind of villain because underneath the shrieking, irrational harpy imagery is the refusal of the story to hold Zeus accountable for his actions. He is infallible, his only sin that perhaps he loved too much. It's good PR for Zeus, honestly, but it makes for a dreadfully dull story about a philanderer just trying his best to raise his secret son and maybe get some coochie on the side without being punished by his scary, hateful wife. The creators ignore the years of deception, the violation and confusion in pretending to be someone else, any aspect of Hera beyond her partnership with Zeus, let alone the importance of Heron and Electra specifically, in order to make another story about a well-meaning man unreasonably beat down by an overzealous woman. If you hate women, just say that. You don't have to do all this extra stuff. Plus, it's such a simplification of these figures that it makes me wonder why use them as the basis of your shallow story at all. Actually, sidebar, let's talk about Zeus for a second. Popular modern interpretations of Zeus are of this rounded, bearded, jolly, sometimes oblivious, but often friendly figure. But in Blood of Zeus, he looks like middle-aged white Jesus. And while I appreciate the deviation from the sexy Santa depiction, I can't help but think that this version of Zeus was a deliberate choice to help push the idea of him being without fault. Taking white Jesus off the table, Zeus is the most human-looking of all the gods. Everyone else has extremely unnatural hair, eye, or skin color, and typically two of the three, making Zeus the most comfortably close to human when he isn't glowing, or even angelic when he is, with the next closest probably being Hermes. Again, I appreciate the shift away from the image of the extremely powerful oaf, but pivoting to this sanctified, still bumbling, completely altruistic father figure is one of the least creative decisions on this show. Other than being a limp, boring trope to pick up, modern interpretations of morality and humility do not slide onto figures from antiquity like couch covers. And it's not just because our ideas have shifted over the past 2,000 years, but because these figures weren't ever supposed to be seen as operating similarly to us. There are Greek gods for humility and wisdom and forgiveness, and none of them are Zeus. In fact, I think all of them are goddesses. There are multiple gods for justice alone. Hell, Zeus slept with one of them to create another. If you want to focus a story around a god who would consider maybe giving something up to keep a human in their life, maybe don't pick the dude who has a track record of turning conquest into foliage. And going back to the wet cardboard flavored set of character traits, in a story that wants to only consider the emotional drive of its main male character and potentially its male antagonist, and even then to only give surface level understandings of both of their motivations, to give the protagonist this spotless build-a-daddy figure helps feed the fire around the heartless harpy hunting them down without questioning the behavior of the reckless motherfucker who's actually causing all of this nonsense.
Zeus is so nice, so caring, trying so hard. Wow, isn't he great?
No! He's a philandering rapist who would sooner transform you into a herb than hide you from his wife for 2 decades. I want to see modern depictions of Zeus as the selfish asshole from antiquity who does what he wants because he can, instead of this blatant connection between him and modern ideas of a benevolent sky daddy that don't match up. At the very least, we can't pretend like this characterization of Zeus is creative, innovative, or entertaining. Something I really liked about Hades the game is that it took a popular modern interpretation of Hades the god as this big bad grumpy asshole and pulled it apart. As you uncover more of the story, your understanding of Hades' motivation and the Olympians' friendliness in helping you starts to shift. We can't so easily put these characters on one end of the morality scale or the other, which, other than making for more interesting storytelling, is kind of the point of stories about gods in the first place. The idea of them operating outside of mortal standards of morality. It's why they can make decisions that seem cruel or selfish or unreasonable without much worry, because to them it's just another Tuesday. And the game doesn't just flip a switch and suddenly make Hades the god a good guy. You have to build up to this shift in understanding. And Zagreus is continuously vocal about his frustrations with his father along the way. As for women, Hades the game has a larger cast of characters in Blood of Zeus, but about a third of them are women. They each stand apart in personality and in the roles they play in the story. Zagreus' journey is made possible, the full story is unraveled and revealed through collaboration with multiple other rounded characters, many of whom are women. I think what's truly fascinating to me about Hades the game is that it does almost all of its storytelling through conversations. There isn't a dependence on grandiose cutscenes or flashy Easter eggs. You learn almost everything from talking to people for very short bursts of time. And yet the game does an amazing job of building a story that doesn't feel like you're being fed information. Blood of Zeus has the opportunity to have some storytelling within the background details, and occasionally does, as most notably with the shot of Apollo in bed with Daphne and Hyacinth, but the show fails at utilizing the characters at the forefront of the story to tell a tale that's dynamic or interesting. What Blood of Zeus relies on more than the names of the gods is a familiar dynamic of a budding young hero fighting against an irrationally evil force. Why the hero has to be Heron, why his mother needed to die, why Alexia even needs to be in the story at all, why Seraphim needed to be related to Heron, why Zeus needed to make a sword that Heron never wields. None of the details really matter if your whole story is built off of tired old tropes. And although Hades the game is the stronger story that shows the potential to do more than slap a new coat of paint onto a worn-out narrative, I think Blood of Zeus will set the tempo for the stories we'll see in my theoretical trend. Not just because it's a show, so it'll be easier to add to or duplicate, but because hoes love Hercules. By hoes, I mean producers and consumers of genre-specific content, and by Hercules, I mean stories about big, brolic underdogs doing something physically phenomenal, specifically ones who are children of Zeus, whose stories center around someone wanting to depose him, or both. There are so many other figures and so many other myths to build upon, pull apart, take inspiration from, than just the trials and tribulations of Zeus's bastards. But no, the story of the son of the king of gods becoming a great man himself, that's the story we should reproduce. I guess the past 2 millennia wasn't enough time for us to get that out of our system. As a viewer, I'm bored, but as a storyteller, I'm worried that as the flawless reviews of an earnestly mediocre show herald its non-existent creativity, more producers will slide back into investing in familiar narratives of familiar types of characters, instead of branching out further towards stories and protagonists that would truly be something different. If you made it to the end, thank you for making it to the end. Have you played this game? What's your favorite weapon if you have? Have you watched this show? Did you lose track of how many times we had to rewatch the mother figures die in flashbacks? Are you actually more interested with pop culture's trend towards Norse mythology? Let me know. I read about Hades and Persephone in the 3rd grade, I think, and have been irrationally invested ever since. Something about becoming the queen of the dead that just resonates with me. I don't know. But I'm very uninspired by the 1001 ways we can remix Hercules. Anyway, this is likely the last bit of content I'll have up before 2020 is done, unless I can find a link for that KFC Lifetime movie and form a collection of thoughts beyond what the finger-looking fuck. So, I want to wish you all a happy winter solstice, a peaceful end of year, and a prosperous start to the new year. Until next time, stay safe. I'll catch you in the next echo chamber.